2 years ago, when Delilah called me in tears, telling me that they were being evicted from their apartment because the new owner was selling the house, I didn't even think twice. Of course, come on over, I said. The house is big, there's plenty of room for everyone. Aldrich is my youngest son, and Tabitha and Wade are my grandchildren. Family is family. I remember how they arrived on that rainy October evening. Aldrich was carrying boxes from the van they had hired, and Delilah stood in the hallway of my house, looking around as if she were evaluating her purchase. The children ran around the rooms, enjoying the space after their cramped two-room apartment. "Mom, we're so grateful to you," Aldrich said, hugging me. "It's only for a couple of months until we find something suitable." Delilah nodded, but I noticed how carefully she studied my furniture, the layout of the rooms, and the size of the windows. At the time, it seemed natural to me. The woman just wanted to figure out how to best arrange everything. The first few weeks passed quietly. I gave them the upper floor, which had 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom. I stayed downstairs in my room next to the kitchen. We didn't talk much. Aldrich worked at a car repair shop from morning to night. Delilah was looking for work after being laid off from the dental clinic, and the children were at school. But after a month, small changes began to take place. First, Delilah rearranged the furniture in the living room. "Bernice, do you mind?" she asked, already moving my favorite sofa from the window to the wall. "It's just more convenient for the kids to do their homework." I didn't argue. After all, if it was more convenient for them, why not? The sofa had been standing by the window for 15 years, ever since my husband had put it there. Maybe it was time for a change. Then my favorite tablecloth disappeared from the kitchen table, the one my mother had embroidered. It was replaced by a bright oilcloth with a children's design. "The children eat," Delilah explained when I cautiously inquired. "They'll get your beautiful tablecloth dirty. It's better to put it away to keep it safe." The tablecloth was put away in a cupboard, and I never saw it again. In the winter, Delilah found a job as an administrator at a private clinic. The salary was decent, and she and Aldrich began talking about finding their own place soon. But winter passed, spring came, and the talk of moving somehow died down on its own. By this time, a lot had changed in the house. A huge TV appeared in the living room, which Aldrich brought home after a successful repair job. The client paid him with appliances instead of money. My old TV moved to my bedroom. "It'll be better for you to watch your programs in peace," Delilah explained. "The kids and I won't bother you." The refrigerator had also been transformed. My usual groceries, cottage cheese, kefir, salad vegetables, had been pushed aside to make room for children's yogurt, semi-prepared meals, and soda. Delilah did a big grocery shop once a week, and gradually the refrigerator began to reflect her tastes rather than mine. "Bernice, do we have any mayonnaise?" she would ask, rummaging through jars and bags. "We have—" This phrase appeared unnoticed but became firmly established in Delilah's vocabulary. "We're out of bread. We have guests today. The children are sick." I had worked as a nurse for 38 years and was used to order and quiet. After my husband died 3 years ago, the house seemed too big and empty. So at first I even enjoyed the family noise. Children's laughter, footsteps on the stairs, the sound of the TV. It all reminded me of when my own sons were little. But gradually I began to notice that my opinion was being taken less and less into account in the house. Whereas before Delilah would ask if she could invite a friend over for coffee, now she would simply announce that Cynthia was coming over with the children tomorrow. My attempts to play classical music were met with disapproving looks. Wade could switch the radio to his station at any moment without even asking if I was listening to anything in particular. "Grandma, that music is boring," he would say, and Delilah wouldn't say a word. In the summer, the situation worsened. Delilah decided to redesign the garden. My favorite roses, which I had been growing for over 10 years, were uprooted and replaced with a playground. "The kids need somewhere to play," she said when I discovered a pile of discarded bushes behind the shed. "You can plant the roses somewhere else." There was no other place. Instead of roses, there was a swing set and a sandbox that Aldrich had built from boards over the weekend. By last fall, I realized that I was living in my own home as a guest. My schedule was adjusted to fit the family's routine. My habits were considered the quirks of an elderly person that could be ignored. My things gradually disappeared or were moved to places where they couldn't be found. When I looked for my favorite cup, the only one I was used to drinking my morning tea from, Delilah shrugged. It probably broke. We have children. Anything can happen. But the cup wasn't broken. I found it a week later in the far corner of the kitchen cupboard behind the jam jars. Apparently, someone had decided that one cup was too many for the kitchen. By winter, the situation had become completely unbearable. Delilah started making comments about the state of the house. "Bernice, could you clean up after yourself?" she would say, finding my cup and plate in the sink after breakfast. I had cleaned up after myself my whole life, but now every spoon left behind became a reason to talk about how important it was to keep the house clean when there were children living there. Aldrich preferred to remain silent in these situations. He came home from work tired, had dinner, and watched TV. Family conflicts weighed heavily on him, and he always chose the path of least resistance, agreeing with his wife and asking me not to pay attention to the little things. "Mom, you understand Delilah is tired from work. The children need attention," he would say. "Be patient. We'll find our place soon." But for some reason, the search for our own home was not progressing. Every time I cautiously inquired about their plans, Delilah replied that nothing suitable had come up yet, or that the prices were too high, or that the neighborhoods were not right. Quentin, my eldest son, rarely visited, once every 3 or 4 months on weekends. He worked as an engineer for a large company in a neighboring regional center, was busy with projects, and didn't have a family of his own. When he came home, the atmosphere lightened a little. Delilah behaved more reserved, the children were quieter, and Aldrich tried to spend more time with his family. "How are you, Mom?" Quentin would ask, and I always replied that everything was fine. What could I say? That I felt like a stranger in my own home? That my daughter-in-law was gradually driving me out of my own territory? It would have sounded like the complaints of an elderly woman who couldn't get along with her relatives. Maybe that was the case. Maybe I had become too picky and conservative. Maybe I should have been happy that the house was full of life instead of clinging to old habits. But at night, lying in my bedroom and listening to the sounds of people walking, talking, and laughing upstairs, I knew something was wrong. The house that had been my home for more than 20 years was becoming a stranger, and I didn't know how to stop it. In the spring of that year, something finally snapped. Delia no longer asked permission for anything. She simply presented me with a fait accompli, and the tone of her voice did not allow for objection. In April, she announced that she would be inviting her friends over for coffee on Saturdays. She didn't ask if it was convenient for me or if I had any plans for the weekend. She just stated it as if it were a done deal. "The girls miss normal conversation," she said, taking my best tea set out of the cupboard. "Cafes are expensive and it's more comfortable at home." The first meeting took place in the living room. 5 women sat on my sofas discussing work, children, husbands. They talked loudly and laughed even louder. I locked myself in my bedroom with a book, but the conversation penetrated even there. "We have such a spacious house," I heard Delilah's voice. "Finally, we can have guests over properly, at our place." That word again. A week later, my friends came over again, and this time they took over not only the living room, but also the kitchen. When I tried to make myself lunch, one of them, a heavy-set woman with dyed hair, looked at me as if I were disturbing the owners of the house. "Cynthia, meet Bernice, Aldrich's mother," Delilah introduced me. "Bernice, could you eat later? We're discussing something here." I went to my room on an empty stomach. In my own home, I was asked to wait for dinner because the guests were more important. Gradually, these gatherings began to take place not only on Saturdays. Delilah's friends would show up during the week, stay for dinner, and sometimes linger until late at night. The house was filled with unfamiliar voices, the smells of unfamiliar cosmetics, and the sound of heels on my parquet floor. My timid attempts to express my dissatisfaction were met with a wall of incomprehension. "Bernice, don't be so childish," Delilah would say. "People need to socialize. Or do you want us to sit here like we're in prison?" Aldrich supported his wife. "Mom, what's the big deal?" he would ask in surprise. "The women got together and talked. They're not bothering you." But they did bother me. They bothered me because I couldn't watch TV in peace in the living room because there were strangers walking around. They bothered me because the refrigerator was emptied after each visit. The guests were not averse to snacking. They bothered me because I felt like an unwanted witness to someone else's life in my own home. In May, the situation got even worse. Delilah started making comments about my behavior in the house. "Bernice, could you please not play the music so loud?" she would say when I was listening to classical music in my room. "The children need to do their homework." The music was quieter than the TV in the living room, but Delilah felt that any noise I made was disturbing family life. "And another thing," she continued, "could you not leave your pills on the kitchen table? The children might accidentally take them." My blood pressure medication was in a small box next to the salt shaker. It was convenient for me to remember to take it with my meals. Now, according to Delilah, it was a danger to the children, who were already 12 and 9 years old. "Actually, it would be nice if you cleaned up after yourself," she added, seeing my cup in the sink. "Our house should be tidy." Our house, not mine, not the house where she had been living temporarily for 2 years, but ours. Her comments were especially hurtful when the children were around. Tabitha and Wade were used to their grandmother being scolded by their mother, and it became the norm for them. Sometimes they even started repeating their mother's phrases. "Grandma, Mom says you can't leave plates in the sink," Wade would say when I didn't have time to wash the dishes right away. "Grandma, why does your room smell like old people?" Tabitha would ask, and I could clearly hear someone's adult words in her question. The children no longer saw me as a grandmother who spoiled and protected them. I became an aunt who lived in their house and sometimes caused inconvenience. In June, Delilah decided to change the laundry schedule. "Bernice, let's make a deal," she said, catching me in the bathroom with a basket of laundry. "You'll do laundry on Mondays and Thursdays, and we'll do it the other days. Otherwise, it gets messy." The washing machine was mine, bought with my retirement money, but now I had to coordinate the schedule for its use. "And another thing," she added, "don't load the machine halfway. It's not economical. It's better to save up more laundry." I, who had done laundry as needed my entire life, was now being told the rules for using my own appliances in my own home. Attempts to talk to Aldrich were futile. My son was tired from work and wanted peace and quiet when he came home. Family arguments annoyed him. "Mom, why are you nitpicking?" he would say. "Delilah is right. There has to be order in the house, especially now that we all live together." "Aldrich, but this is my house," I timidly objected. "So what?" he wondered. "We're a family. Is it bad that the house is full of life? I remember you always complained that it was too quiet after Dad died." He was right. I did complain about the silence and emptiness. But I didn't realize that family life would mean completely losing control of my own space. "Mom, be happy that your grandchildren are growing up nearby," Aldrich continued. "Many grandmothers dream of this, and you're always dissatisfied." My grandchildren were indeed nearby, but my relationship with them had changed dramatically. Before, when they came to visit, I was special to them. The grandmother who allowed them to do things their parents didn't, bought them sweets, and listened to their secrets. Now I was part of their daily routine, and not the most important part at that. They only came to me when they needed something, to ask for money for ice cream or to find something they needed. "Grandma, give me 10 rubles, Wade would say without looking up from his phone. "Grandma, where's Mom?" Tabitha would ask when she needed something. No confidential conversations, no walks together, no bedtime stories. I became the service staff in the house where my grandchildren grew up. In the summer, Delilah finally felt like the mistress of the house. She began inviting not only her friends, but also her colleagues from work, neighbors with children, and distant relatives. "My sister is coming over with her family today," she would announce, without asking about my plans. "They'll sleep in the living room." My living room turned into a passageway. People ate dinner there, watched movies, played with the children, and slept. I couldn't go in there without knocking, lest someone be changing or sleeping. In August, something happened that finally clarified my position in the house. I invited my old friend Mira over for lunch. We hadn't seen each other in months and wanted to catch up and reminisce. Delilah reacted very negatively to the news. "Bernice, we're cleaning today," she said. And you should have warned me in advance. The children are used to relaxing in the living room after school. But Mira is already on her way, I replied, flustered. We agreed yesterday. Well, then sit in the kitchen, Delilah graciously allowed. But not for long. Mira arrived, and we did indeed sit in the kitchen like two maids who had been allowed to drink tea during working hours. Delilah was making a lot of noise with the vacuum cleaner in the living room. The children were watching cartoons loudly, and it was impossible to have a normal conversation. Something's wrong here, Mira remarked as she left earlier than planned. I didn't know what to say to her. Explain that I couldn't have a friend over in my own living room? That my daughter-in-law considered my plans less important than the children's rest? After that incident, I realized it was time to change something, but I didn't know what. September began rainy and cold. The heating was turned on in the house, and I felt another long winter approaching in this strange atmosphere of tension and unspoken words. That's when I decided to have a small tea party with my friends. We hadn't seen each other in a long time, and I wanted to have a normal conversation in a relaxed atmosphere. I planned to invite Mira, Mrs. Grimshaw from next door, and Clara, my former colleague from the hospital. Nothing special, just a regular Sunday tea party, like we used to have regularly before the house filled up with permanent residents. On Thursday evening, I approached Dela, who was washing the dishes after dinner. Delilah, I wanted to invite some friends over for tea on Sunday, I said cautiously. 3 of them, for a couple of hours. We'll sit in the living room and won't be in the way. She didn't answer right away, continuing to scrub the plate as if she wanted to scrub the pattern off it. On Sunday? She finally asked. What, no other day? Well, everyone's busy on weekdays, they're working, and on Saturday, Mira's grandson is coming. Delilah put the plate in the dish rack and turned to me. Her face showed poorly concealed irritation. Bernice, do you know that it's Tabitha's birthday on Sunday? I was taken aback. My granddaughter's birthday was in mid-October. I remembered that clearly. But I didn't ask her again. What if my memory was failing me? No, I didn't know. Can we do it on Saturday then? We're cleaning on Saturday, and besides, the children are used to relaxing in the living room on weekends. It's their home too. The phrase hung in the air and we both felt its weight. Okay, I said quietly. Then I'll move it to next weekend. Delia nodded and went back to the dishes, and I went to my room with an unpleasant feeling in my stomach. Something in her tone, in the way she said children's home, made me feel like a beggar in my own home. But the next day, it turned out that there was no birthday party planned for Tabitha on Sunday. What's more, when I cautiously asked my granddaughter about it, she replied with surprise, Grandma, my birthday is in October, you know that. So Delilah just didn't want me to invite her friends. But why not say so? On Friday evening, I approached my daughter-in-law again. Delilah, can we do it next Sunday? I've already made plans with my friends. She looked up from her phone, which she was engrossed in, and looked at me with ill-concealed displeasure. Bernice, why are you pestering me? You have plans every weekend. The family needs time together too. But you have your friends over almost every Saturday, I dared to object. And I'm only asking once a month. That's completely different, Delilah snapped. My friends are family friends. Your old ladies just gossip and complain about life. Old ladies. Mira was 58, Mrs. Grimshaw was 61, and Claire was 59. They were ordinary working women or recent retirees, my peers and friends. But to Delilah, we were all old women who did nothing but gossip. Fine, I said, feeling resentment boiling up inside me. Then I'll move the meeting to the kitchen. The kitchen? Delilah laughed, but it was an unpleasant, contemptuous laugh. Bernice, what kind of kindergarten is this? 4 women in a small kitchen drinking tea from glasses? She was right. The kitchen was small, cramped for 4 people. But I couldn't see any other option. On Saturday morning, while cleaning the living room, I heard Delilah talking on the phone with her friend Cynthia. Come over tomorrow, don't worry, she said. Bring the kids too. Ours can play together. We'll have a nice time, talk. So Delilah also had plans for the living room on Sunday. And she knew that very well when she refused me. On Saturday evening, I tried to talk to Aldrich. Son, can I invite my friends over tomorrow? We'll be quiet and won't disturb anyone. Aldrich was lying on the sofa watching football. Without taking his eyes off the screen, he muttered, "Mom, talk to Delilah. This is women's business." "I'll talk to her, but she always finds reasons to refuse." "Well, then there are reasons. We all live in the same house. We have to consider everyone." The same house. My son also considered my house to be shared, where my opinion was just one of many, and not the most important one. On Sunday morning, I got up early, baked a cake, and set the table in the kitchen. My friends were supposed to arrive at 2 o'clock. At 1:30, Mira called. "Bernie, we're going to sit in the living room, right? Claire's back hurts, and she won't be comfortable on the hard chair." I promised to take care of it and went to look for Delilah. I found her in the bathroom painting her nails. "Delilah, can we sit in the living room after all? Clara has back problems and it will be hard for her in the kitchen." Delilah didn't look up, continuing to carefully apply the nail polish. "No, we can't. I told you Cynthia is coming over with the kids today. We're using the living room." "But they're not here yet," I said, confused. "Maybe we can move before they arrive." "Bernice!" Delilah finally looked up at me as if I were an annoying child. "I don't want the whole house to smell like your old lady perfume. Cynthia will bring the kids over and you'll have 4 old women sitting here discussing their illnesses." "They're my friends," I said quietly. "And we don't just talk about illnesses." "Yeah, right. About how young people are bad these days and how things used to be better." Delilah snorted. "I know those conversations by heart." At that moment, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the last straw, or maybe it was just too much resentment that had built up over the past 2 years. "Delilah," I said, trying to sound calm, "this is my house. I've lived here for 23 years, and I have the right to invite my friends into my living room." She stood up abruptly, knocking over the bottle of nail polish. Red liquid spilled across the white tabletop. "Damn it!" she cursed, grabbing napkins. "See what happens when you come in with your demands?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Shut up!" Delilah exploded, her voice becoming shrill and angry. "I'm sick of you and your friends. Every week it's the same thing. I want to go here. I want to go there. It's inconvenient. I don't like it." She wiped the nail polish, but the stain only smeared, becoming larger. "We live here, you understand? We live here. We have children. We have our own lives, our own plans, and you're always meddling with your whims." "It's not whims," I tried to argue. "I just want to see my friends sometimes." "See your friends," Delilah mimicked me. "What? Can't you meet them at a cafe or go for a walk in the park? Does it have to be here, in the house where people live?" "But this is my house." "No!" Delilah yelled so loudly that I recoiled. "It's not your house. It's our house. We all live here, and you have no right to dictate the rules." The scream was so loud that the house fell silent. The TV in the kids' room fell silent. The music upstairs stopped playing. Even the street noise seemed to fade away. Delilah stood in front of me, red with rage, breathing heavily. Her hands were shaking. "Remember this once and for all," she said, her voice quieter but still ringing with anger. "We live here as equals, and if you don't like something, then the problem is with you, not us." I remained silent. A lump formed in my throat, and my eyes stung with tears I was trying to hold back. "And anyway," Delilah added, apparently deciding to finish what she had to say, "it's time you realized that old age is no excuse for demanding special treatment. We all try to live peacefully, but you're always creating conflict." She left the bathroom, slamming the door loudly. I was left alone, staring at the red spot of nail polish that was slowly spreading across the white surface. Half an hour later, I called my friends back and canceled the meeting, saying I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I really did feel awful. In the evening, laughter and conversation could be heard in the house again. Cynthia arrived with her 2 children in the living room filled with the sounds of a cheerful group. Delilah was a gracious hostess, serving her guests, showing them around the house, and telling them how they had settled in. I sat in my room listening to the sounds and thinking about what had happened that morning. Delilah had shouted that it wasn't my house, the house I had bought with my husband, where I had raised my children, where I had buried my husband, and where I had rejoiced at the birth of my grandchildren. Not my house. I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. I lay in the dark and thought about what to do next. Of course, I could try to talk to Aldrich again, explained to him what was going on. But what could I explain? That I felt like a stranger in my own home? That my daughter-in-law considered me a burden? My son loved his wife, and the children were used to a certain way of life. It would be selfish to destroy the family because of my own grievances, but continuing to live in this atmosphere was becoming unbearable. Maybe Delilah was right, and it was time for me to admit that the family needed its own space. Maybe I really should think about moving to a place where I would be the mistress of the house, not a tolerant lodger. These thoughts frightened me. The house was all I had left of my former life, of my time with my husband. It held our shared memories. It was where I felt his presence. How could I leave all that behind? But on the other hand, what good are memories if the present has turned into a constant struggle for the right to exist in your own space? After that argument with Delilah, I spent several sleepless nights thinking about the situation. The words, "This is not your home," echoed in my head like an annoying melody that I couldn't get rid of. By Wednesday, I had made up my mind. I needed to find out what my options were. On Thursday morning, when everyone had left for work, I took the house documents out of the closet. The title deed was in my name after my husband's death. Legally, the house belonged only to me, but legal technicalities meant little when you feel like an unwanted guest in your own home. I found several real estate agencies in the phone book and chose one in the city center, far from our neighborhood. I didn't want any of my acquaintances to find out about my plans ahead of time. I was afraid to call. My hand was shaking as I dialed the number. "New Home Real Estate Agency, how can I help you?" "Hello?" I cleared my throat, my voice sounding unfamiliar. "I need some advice on home appraisal." "Of course, what exactly are you interested in?" "I have a private house and I would like to know its market value." The woman on the other end of the line was polite and professional. We agreed to meet the next day at their office. I wrote down the address and time and hid the piece of paper in the far corner of my wallet. All Friday, I was nervous, thinking up explanations in case someone in my family asked where I was going. But no one asked. Delia was busy with work and the kids, and Aldrich was in the garage fixing someone's car. No one seemed to notice I was gone for a couple of hours. The real estate agency was located in a small office on the second floor of a business center. I was greeted by a woman in her 40s who introduced herself as Patricia Morrison. "Tell me about your house," she asked, seating me in a chair across from her desk. I described the house. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a small garden. Built in the 80s, it was in good condition with all utilities in working order. "It's a quiet neighborhood," I added. "There's a school and a bus stop nearby, and it's only 15 minutes to the city center by public transportation." Patricia took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Then she took out a calculator and calculated something for a while. "The preliminary estimate is between 120,000 and 140,000, she finally said. "We'll be able to give you a more accurate figure after an inspection." The amount seemed enormous to me. My husband and I had bought this house for 28,000, and even then it seemed like we were taking on an unpayable mortgage. "How quickly do houses like this usually sell?" I asked. "With the right price. Anywhere from a month to 3 months. But the market is quite active right now, so it could be faster." I asked for information about what we could buy for that money. Patricia gave me several brochures with offers for apartments and small houses. "If you decide to sell, give me a call," she said as she left. "We'll do a full appraisal and help you find buyers." At home, I hid the brochures in a chest of drawers under some old photographs. In the evening, when everyone had gone to bed, I took them out and began to study them. Apartments in the center cost between 50 and 70,000. 1-room and 2-room apartments, some with balconies, small but neat, in modern buildings with elevators and concierges. With the money left over, I could live without working for another 10 or 15 years. The idea of moving began to seem not so fantastic. A small apartment where I would be the sole mistress, where I could invite friends over without asking permission, where my things wouldn't disappear or be moved without my knowledge. But at the same time, the thought of selling the house was frightening. It was my family home, the house where my grandchildren were born. where I had spent the best years of my life. How could I give all that up? On Saturday morning, while having breakfast in the kitchen, I overheard Delilah talking to a friend on the phone. Come on, Sin, of course she's not moving, Delilah laughed. Where would she go? She has everything here, her children, her grandchildren, her familiar surroundings. There was a pause, probably while her friend was saying something. Let her grumble, Delilah continued. Old people are always dissatisfied with everything. At least the children are growing up in a normal house, not in some communal apartment. Another pause. No, Aldrich supports her. He understands that the family needs space. And Mom's whims are temporary. She'll get over it. I quietly left the kitchen without listening to the rest of the conversation. So Delilah was sure I wasn't going anywhere. That I would put up with it and keep quiet because old people have nowhere else to go. Maybe it was time to show her she was wrong. On Sunday, while Delilah was cooking lunch and the kids were watching cartoons, I decided to talk to Aldrich about our relationship. Son, can we talk? He looked up from the newspaper he was reading, stretched out on the sofa. Sure, Mom, what's up? I feel like we're getting too cramped. Maybe it's time for you guys to find a place of your own? Aldrich frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? We live fine. Sure, we have our disagreements, but every family does. But you said you were only planning to live here temporarily. We did, yes. But you know how difficult it is to find a place to live these days. Prices are rising and good options are snapped up quickly. We're looking, but we haven't found anything suitable yet. He stood up, came over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. Mom, what's wrong? Delilah said you had a fight over some friends of yours. It's nothing, really. Aldrich, it's not about friends. The thing is, I feel like I don't belong in my own home. What are you talking about? His son asked, genuinely surprised. How could you not belong here? You're our mom, the kid's grandmother. We love and appreciate you. But Delilah. What about Delilah? He sighed. Mom, you understand women are women. She wants to be the lady of the house. That's normal. You were young once. Remember how important it was to make your own nest? I remembered. But back then we were making our own home, not someone else's. Be patient, Aldrich asked. We'll find something suitable and move. In the meantime, let's live peacefully. That evening, I accidentally overheard Delilah talking to her husband in their bedroom. The door was ajar, and I could hear them clearly. Aldrich, I think your mother needs professional help, Delilah said. What kind of help? Well, psychological or medical. She's become strange. First, she demands a living room for her friends, then she says we have to move out. Maybe it's signs of dementia. Dementia! I was so upset I couldn't breathe. Del, don't make things up, Aldrich replied. Mom's fine. She's just used to living alone. Maybe she really would be better off in a specialized facility, Delilah continued. They provide care, socialization with people her own age, and medical supervision. What are you talking about? What kind of facility? Well, a nursing home, a retirement home. There are some really nice ones now, like sanatoriums. People are happy there. They don't suffer from loneliness. Delilah, she's my mother. She's a healthy woman, just a little conservative. Aldrich, think about it. The children are growing up. They need more space. Tabitha is almost 13. She needs her own room. We're all crammed into one bedroom. But the house is big. It's big, but it's not made of rubber. Your mother has the best room downstairs. We're crammed upstairs. We're young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. Pause. Aldrich was apparently thinking about his wife's words. I'm not saying we should kick her out tomorrow, Delilah continued gently. But we could start looking around. Go out and see what's available. Maybe she'll like it herself. I don't know, Del. It seems cruel. Cruel is forcing the whole family to adapt to one person's whims. The children are already starting to notice that their grandmother is always unhappy. It's bad for their mental health. I quietly went to my room and closed the door. So Delilah was already planning my future, a nursing home, a retirement home, a specialized facility, all nicely packaged as concern for my well-being. And the worst thing was that she was convincing Aldrich of this. Slowly, gradually, but methodically, she instilled in him the idea that his mother was more trouble than she was worth. That night, I finally decided it was time to act. If Delilah thought I wouldn't go anywhere because I was old and helpless, she was wrong. I have a house, I have money, I have the opportunity to live independently. On Monday morning, I called Patricia Morrison again. I'm ready to order a full home appraisal, I said, and I'd like to look at a few apartments. Great, replied the real estate agent. When would be a good time to come and look? We agreed on Wednesday. I had 2 days to prepare myself mentally for the next step. On Wednesday morning, Patricia arrived with a colleague to appraise the house. I told my family that they were property insurance specialists. I had decided to renew my policy. Delia shrugged and Aldrich nodded absently. No one was particularly interested. The realtors spent about an hour in the house, measuring rooms, taking photos, and making notes. Patricia was pleased with the condition of the house. She especially liked the garden and the fact that all the utilities were in good working order. It's a very nice property, she said as she left. I think $135,000 is a realistic price. Maybe even more if we find buyers who need a place urgently. That evening, we went to look at apartments. I didn't like the first two. They were too small and dark. The third one was exactly what I was looking for. It was a 2-room apartment on the 4th floor of a panel building from the 1990s. It was bright, with large windows overlooking the city park. The kitchen was small but functional. The living room was spacious enough to entertain guests. The bedroom was cozy, with a built-in wardrobe. The bathroom was combined but in good condition. The building was constructed 25 years ago, but it was recently renovated, Patricia explained. The pipes and wiring were replaced and the facade was insulated. There is a concierge in the lobby, a playground in the courtyard, and parking. The price was $62,000, almost half the estimated value of my house. The neighborhood is nice. It's a half-hour walk to the center, and there's a clinic and grocery stores nearby. The owner is selling urgently because she's moving to another city, Patricia added. She might drop the price to $60,000 if the deal is quick. I imagine myself in this apartment. My tea set on the kitchen table, my books on the shelves in the living room, my flowers on the windowsill. No one would move the furniture without asking. No one would tell me I couldn't invite my friends over. I like it, I said. But first I have to sell my house. I understand. Call me when you decide. On Thursday evening, Patricia called unexpectedly. Bernice, I have some exciting news for you, she said excitedly. We found a buyer for your house, but we haven't even put it up for sale yet. I know, but we have a database of clients who are looking for a house in your neighborhood. A young family, the husband works at a bank, the wife is a teacher. They have 2 school-age children. They've been looking for a house with a garden for a long time, and yours is perfect for them. My heart began to race. And the price? They're willing to pay $130,000, but on the condition that the deal is done quickly. They have the entire amount in cash, no loans or installments. They want to complete the purchase within a month. $130,000 in cash in a month. That would be enough for an apartment and still leave enough for a comfortable life. Do they want to see the house? I asked, feeling my voice tremble. Of course. Tomorrow evening or over the weekend. I thought about my family. Tomorrow was Friday. Aldrich would be home early, and the children too. Delilah usually did a big clean on Fridays. It would be better on the weekend when she could come up with an excuse for the family to be out. Saturday morning, around 11? Great. They'll be happy. I hung up and sat on my bed for a while, trying to process what was happening. Everything was happening so fast that my head was spinning. Just a week ago, I was only thinking about the possibility of selling, and now there were actual buyers with an actual offer. On Friday, I was nervous and distracted. I spilled sugar at breakfast, forgot to turn off the radio in my room, and asked Tabitha twice about school. Fortunately, my family attributed it to my age and bad mood. In the evening, when everyone gathered in the kitchen for dinner, I announced, "Tomorrow morning I'm going to Mira's. She's sick. I'll sit with her and help out around the house." "Will you be long?" asked Delilah, serving the children potatoes. "I don't know. Maybe until lunchtime. It depends how she feels." "Okay," nodded my sister-in-law. "We'll manage here." Aldrich didn't even look up from his plate, and the children didn't show much interest in my plans either. No one cared. On Saturday morning, I got up early and tidied up the house. I dusted the living room, picked up the children's toys that were scattered everywhere, and smoothed out the covers on the sofas. I wanted the house to look its best. At 10:30, I left, saying I was going to visit a sick friend. In fact, I just walked around the neighboring streets, and at 11 I returned and saw an unfamiliar car at the gate. Patricia was waiting for me at the gate with a young couple. The man was about 35 in a neat coat, and the woman was about the same age with a pleasant face and kind eyes. "Bernice, meet Robert and Selena Baxter," Patricia introduced them. We said hello, and I showed them into the house. The couple looked around all the rooms carefully, discussing the layout and asking questions about the utilities, heating, and the condition of the roof. "The house is in excellent condition," Robert said when we finished the tour. "You can tell it's been well cared for." "And the garden is just beautiful," Selena added. "Our children will be delighted. They've been dreaming of having their own yard for a long time." I felt a little sad. This house was really good for a family with children. There was room for games, for celebrations, for a happy family life. It was just a shame that my family didn't appreciate it. "We're willing to buy the house for $130,000, said Robert, "provided the deal is quick. We need to move by the end of October." "Do you have the full amount?" I asked. "Yes, in cash. We sold our apartment in the capital and the money is already in the account." Patricia took the documents out of her bag. "If you agree, we can sign a preliminary contract right now. The legal formalities will take a couple of weeks and the house will be theirs." I took the documents and glanced over the main points. Everything looked serious and honest. $130,000 for the house that had become a cage for me. The opportunity to start a new, independent life. "Okay," I said, feeling strangely light. "I agree." We signed the preliminary contract. The Bakers put down a deposit of $10,000. The final deal was set for October 15th. After they left, I was alone in the house that was no longer mine. Formally, it still belonged to me for the next 3 weeks, but psychologically, I had already separated myself from it. I walked through the rooms, remembering different periods of my life here. Here was the nursery where the boys grew up. Here was the living room where we celebrated birthdays and New Year's Eve. Here was the bedroom where my husband died holding my hand. So many memories, and not all of them bad, but the past cannot be brought back, and the present had become unbearable. On Monday, I met with Patricia again to finalize the apartment sale. "The owner agrees to $58,000 if you're ready to close the deal in the next few days," the real estate agent said. $58,000 against $130. That leaves $72,000, enough to live comfortably for 10 years, and then we'll see. "I agree," I said. We signed the contract for the apartment. The move was scheduled for October 18th, 3 days after the sale of the house. When I got home, I found the whole family in the kitchen. The children were doing their homework. Delilah was cooking dinner, and Aldrich was reading the newspaper. "How's Mira doing?" my sister-in-law asked without looking up from the stove. "She's better. She's going to the doctor tomorrow." "Good. By the way, I was thinking maybe we should redecorate the living room. The wallpaper is old and we could change the furniture." Redecorating the living room. In a house that would belong to other people in 3 weeks. I wonder what Delilah will say when she finds out the truth. "Don't rush into renovating," I said cautiously. "Maybe we should calculate our finances first." "What's there to calculate?" she asked in surprise. "Aldrich earns good money and I work too. It's our house. We can do what we want with it." Our house. How wrong she was. The next few days were spent getting ready. I secretly started sorting through our things, deciding what to take with us to the new apartment and what to leave behind. There was a lot we could leave behind. The apartment already had furniture, and we had enough dishes for our basic needs. The hardest part was deciding what to do with family photos, documents, and mementos. Photo albums of the children, their drawings, crafts from kindergarten, school certificates. All of these things reminded me of the happy times when we were a real family. In the end, I selected the photos and documents that were most dear to my heart and decided to leave the rest. Let Aldrich deal with the family history himself. On the evening of October 13th, when everyone sat down to dinner, I realized I couldn't put off the conversation any longer. The day after tomorrow, the house would be sold, and the family had no idea. I have some news for you, I began, trying to sound calm. What news? Aldrich asked, without looking up from his food. I sold the house. The fork fell from Delilah's hands and clattered onto her plate. Aldrich froze with a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. The children stopped chewing and stared at me. What do you mean, sold? Delilah asked quietly. Exactly what I said. The deal will be finalized the day after tomorrow. The new owners are moving in next week. Silence reigned. It was so quiet that you could hear the clock ticking on the wall and the hum of the refrigerator. Mom, is this a joke? Aldrich finally said. No, it's not a joke. I have all the documents if you want to see them. The silence that hung in the kitchen after my words was deafening. I could see the information slowly sinking in for everyone sitting at the table. Delilah was the first to recover. You can't sell the house, she said slowly, as if talking to someone who didn't understand the language very well. We live here. I can, I replied calmly. The house belongs to me. I have every right to sell it. Delilah stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. Her face turned white, then red. That's impossible, she shouted. You have no right to throw us out on the street. We have children. I'm not kicking anyone out, I objected. I'm just selling my house. You have time to find another place to live. What time? Delilah's voice grew louder. You said the deal was the day after tomorrow. The new owners are moving in next week. That means you have 10 days. Aldrich finally came out of his stupor. Mom, how can this be? Why didn't you tell us earlier? We didn't know anything. We weren't prepared. I tried to talk to you several times about it being time for you to move out, I reminded them. But you always found excuses. But not like this, Aldrich exclaimed. You couldn't just spring this on us. Tabitha and Wade sat spellbound, shifting their gaze from one adult to the other. Wade looked frightened, Tabitha confused. Grandma, where are we going to live? My granddaughter asked quietly. Before I could answer, Delilah exploded again. We're not going to live anywhere. Because Grandma is crazy, she yelled. Normal people don't do this. Delilah, don't yell at the children, I asked. Don't tell me what to do. She was furious, her hands shaking. You destroyed our family. You threw your own grandchildren out on the street. I'm not throwing anyone out on the street. I'm just selling the house that belongs to me. Belongs to you? Delilah sneered. And who are we? Are we strangers? We've been living here for 2 years. We've settled in. The children are used to it. Aldrich stood up and came over to me. Mom, please explain why you decided this. What's going on? We're a family. I looked at my son, this kind, gentle man who had never been able to stand up for himself and now couldn't even protect his mother. Aldrich, remember what your wife shouted at me last week. She said this wasn't my house. She didn't mean it literally. She did. She also said that I had no right to dictate the rules in a house where everyone lived as equals. Delia suddenly fell silent. She must have remembered that conversation. So I thought, I continued, if it's not my house, why do I need it? I'd rather sell it and buy a place where I'll definitely be the boss. Bernice, Delilah's voice became dangerously quiet. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret it. I doubt it. Where are you going to go? My sister-in-law's voice was tinged with malice. An old woman all alone. Who needs you? I bought an apartment in the city center, I replied calmly. I'm moving there next week. This news finished Delilah off completely. She realized that I had thought everything through in advance, that this was not a spontaneous decision, but a carefully planned operation. You planned everything, she gasped. You deceived us. You lied to our faces, pretended that everything was fine. I didn't deceive anyone. I just didn't think it was necessary to report my plans. Aldrich! Delilah turned to her husband. Say something to her. She can't do this to her family. Aldrich looked confusedly from his wife to his mother. Mom, but what about us? He muttered. We don't have money for urgent rent. Deposits, the first month's rent. Where are we going to get that kind of money? Aldrich, you work, Delilah works, you're adults, you'll figure it out. In 10 days? Her son asked incredulously. Other people can do it, you can do it too. Delilah suddenly clutched her head. What about the children, school, friends? We can't just up and move to another neighborhood. Why not? Children adapt faster than adults. Grandma, Tabitha finally decided to speak up. Why don't you want to live with us? We're not bothering you. My heart ached. Her granddaughter really didn't understand what was going on. For her, it was just the house where the whole family lived. Tabitha, it's not that you're bothering me, I began cautiously. Don't explain anything to her, Delilah interrupted sharply. She's just a child. She won't understand your selfish motives. Selfish? What else would you call it? You only think about yourself, your comfort, your whims. You don't give a damn about the family. Delilah, you were the one who said 2 years ago that this was temporary. You promised that you would find a place soon. We looked, but the real estate market is complicated. Prices are rising. In 2 years, you could have found something suitable if you really wanted to. Why should we look? Delilah suddenly admitted honestly. It's nice here. A big house, a garden, all the amenities. Why move to some cramped apartment? Finally, the truth. They had no intention of moving anywhere. They planned to live here permanently, gradually pushing me into the background. Exactly, I said. Why look for something else when you can live in my house for free and consider yourselves equal owners? We don't live here for free, Delilah protested. We pay for utilities and buy groceries. Utilities and groceries aren't rent. If you were renting, you'd be paying a lot more. Aldrich suddenly sat down on a chair and buried his face in his hands. Mom, how can you do this? He moaned. We thought we were living as a family, but it turns out we're just tenants who can be kicked out at any moment. Aldrich, I'm not kicking you out. I'm selling the house. Those are two different things. It's the same thing to us, Delilah exploded. The result is the same. We're left without a roof over our heads. You have money. You can rent an apartment. What money? My daughter-in-law laughed bitterly. We didn't save up for a move. We thought we were settling down here for good. Wade suddenly started crying, quietly but bitterly, like children cry when they don't understand what's happening, but sense that something bad is happening. Mom, why is everyone yelling? He sobbed. Why is Grandma kicking us out? I'm not kicking you out, Wade, I said gently, approaching my grandson. I just need to live on my own. But why? He looked at me with teary eyes. It was good before. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that adults can't get along? That his mother had gradually turned my life into a nightmare? That I couldn't take the humiliation in my own home anymore? Sometimes it's better for adults to live apart, I said. It doesn't mean we don't love each other anymore. Don't lie to the child, Delilah snapped. If you loved us, you wouldn't be so cruel. Cruel? How have you treated me these past 2 years? You wouldn't let me have friends over. You criticized me in my own home. You planned to send me to a nursing home. Aldrich raised his head. What nursing home? What are you talking about? Ask your wife. She recently suggested finding me a specialized facility. Delilah paled. It was just, I was thinking about your well-being. My well-being? Or how to get rid of an old woman from the house. Mom, is it true? Aldrich asked his wife quietly. Delilah was silent, but her expression was answer enough. I can't believe it, Aldrich muttered. Mom, I'm so ashamed. Aldrich, there's no need to be ashamed. It's not your fault that your wife considered me an obstacle to your happiness. But I should have noticed. I should have protected you. It's too late for that, Delilah snapped. Right now, we need to decide what to do next. She approached me, her face angry and determined. Bernice, this is the last time I'm asking. Can you cancel the sale? No. Then listen carefully. We'll find a way to contest this deal. Incapacity, coercion, whatever. We have rights as family members. You have no rights. The house is in my name. We've lived here for 2 years. We've invested money in repairs and improvements. What money? What repairs? Aldrich built shelves in the nursery. I bought new curtains. Shelves and curtains are not capital investments. Delilah realized that she had no legal leverage. Then she resorted to emotional blackmail. Fine, she said with theatrical sadness. Kick us out. But know this. You have destroyed a family. The children will remember how their grandmother threw them out of their home. Aldrich will remember how his mother betrayed him in his hour of need. Delilah, enough, Aldrich said wearily. Mom's right. We really have stayed here too long. His wife looked at him suspiciously. Are you on her side? I'm not on anyone's side. I just understand that if Mom made this decision, then we pushed the situation too far. We pushed it too far. And she's a saint? Delilah, this is her house. It is, and, well, it will be her house until tomorrow. She had the right to live in it as she pleased. Delilah realized that her husband would not support her in this battle. Then she played her last card. Fine, she said in an icy tone. Have it your way, Bernice. But know this, after this, it's over between us. You'll never see your grandchildren again. We'll find a place to live in another city and disappear from your life forever. The threat hit her hard. Not seeing Tabitha and Wade, not knowing how they were growing up, not being part of their lives. But then I thought, am I part of their lives now? When was the last time we had a normal conversation? When did they tell me their secrets or ask me for advice? She had already almost completely isolated me from my grandchildren. Whatever you say, I replied calmly. My daughter-in-law hadn't expected such a reaction. She must have been sure that her threat would work. So your grandchildren aren't important to you? They are, but not enough to put up with humiliation for their sake. Mom, Aldrich began. That's it, Delilah interrupted him. The conversation is over. Since your mother has chosen her selfishness, let her live with it. She walked over to the children. Tabitha, Wade, let's go upstairs. We need to pack our things. But Mom, Tabitha started. No buts. Grandma decided she doesn't need us. That means we'll live without her. The children obediently followed their mother. At the door, Tabitha turned and looked at me with sad eyes. Grandma, do you really never want to see us again? Tabitha, I'll miss you, I replied honestly. But sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. My granddaughter nodded and left. Only Aldrich and I remained in the kitchen. Mom, my son said quietly, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you from all this. Aldrich, it's not your fault. You were caught between two fires. But I knew that Delilah was sometimes too categorical. I should have intervened. It's too late to think about that now. You'd better decide what to do next. My son sighed heavily. Tomorrow I'll start looking for a place to rent. Maybe I'll find something inexpensive. You will. Lisbon isn't that expensive of a city. We were silent. It grew dark outside, and the kitchen became quiet and sad. Mom, will we see each other again after you move? Of course, I replied, though I wasn't sure. You're my son. You can't go anywhere. Aldrich smiled weakly and went to his room. I was left alone in the kitchen, surrounded by cold dinner and broken hopes. On the morning of October 14th, the house woke up to a heavy atmosphere. No one ate breakfast together. I drank tea in my room. Aldrich had a quick bite and left for work, and Delilah silently got the children ready for school. Hardly a word was spoken, only the bare necessities. After everyone had left, I took out the documents and read them carefully once more. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I had an appointment with the notary to sign the final contract and hand over the keys. Everything had been done correctly. Delilah would not be able to find any legal loopholes, no matter how hard she tried. Around noon, the phone rang. An unfamiliar woman called and introduced herself as a lawyer's assistant. Bernice Creedle, Delilah Creedle asked me to contact you. We would like to discuss the possibility of suspending the real estate sale. So my sister-in-law had already started to take action. Excuse me, but what does Delilah Creedle have to do with the sale of my house? I asked politely. As far as I know, she lives in the house and believes her rights have been violated. What rights exactly? There was a pause. Apparently, the paralegal also didn't understand on what grounds my deal could be contested. We would like to meet and discuss the details. Perhaps we can find a compromise. A compromise has already been found. My son's family is looking for another place to live. Goodbye. I hung up. Half an hour later, the phone rang again. This time it was Delilah herself. Bernice, I have a proposal, she said in a businesslike tone. We are willing to buy your house for $130,000 in cash. Well, not all at once, of course. We can arrange an installment plan or a mortgage. Delilah, the house is already sold. We're signing the papers tomorrow. But you can back out of the deal, pay the penalty, and sell it to us. I can't and I won't. Then we'll take you to court. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're incompetent. No normal person kicks their family out onto the street. I laughed. I couldn't help myself. Deli, try to prove that I'm incompetent. I worked as a nurse until I retired. I have an excellent memory. I filled out the paperwork correctly, and I communicated with the buyers appropriately. What court would declare me incompetent? We'll find a way, she replied angrily and hung up. In the evening, Aldrich returned from work looking gloomy and tired. At dinner, he said he had spent the whole day calling real estate agents and looking at rental ads. There aren't many suitable options, he said. Some are too expensive, some are in bad neighborhoods, and some landlords don't want to rent to families with children. You'll find something, I said. We'll find something, but not in one day. And we don't have much time left. Delilah was silent, but I could see her clenching her fists. All evening, she scribbled something in her notebook, made calculations, called someone, and negotiated something. The next morning, on the day of the final sale of the house, she made one last attempt to break the deal. At 8:30, as I was getting ready to go to the notary, the doorbell rang. A middle-aged man in a business suit was standing on the doorstep. Are you Bernice Creedle? I'm Mortimer, the lawyer representing your sister-in-law. Yes, I'm listening. My client believes that the sale of the house was arranged without taking into account the interests of the actual residents. We insist that the sale be suspended until all the circumstances have been clarified. And I insist that you leave my property, I replied calmly. Your client has no rights to my house. According to the family code, the house belongs to the person whose name is on the documents, and that's me. Goodbye. I closed the door and drove to the notary. The transaction went smoothly. The bakers brought a suitcase with the money. I signed all the documents, and the notary stamped them. The house officially became the property of its new owners. When are you planning to move in? I asked Selena. We'll bring our things tomorrow morning, she replied. We're very excited. Finally, we'll have our own home. Our own home. How that sounded. I remembered that feeling when my husband and I first moved here. Joy, plans for the future, a sense of stability. When I returned home with the sale documents, I found the atmosphere tense. Delia was pacing around the house like a caged animal, and Aldrich was on his phone, continuing his search for a new place. Thank God the children were at school. Well, are you happy now? My daughter-in-law snapped at me. Did you sell it? Yes, I did. And you don't feel sorry for anything? Not the children, not your son? I do feel sorry, but not enough to put up with your antics for years to come. Delilah suddenly slumped down on the sofa and began to cry. Not dramatically, but genuinely, bitterly. What are we going to do now? She sobbed. Where will we go? We have nothing. Aldrich approached his wife and embraced her. We'll find something, he said wearily, at least for a while. But the children, they'll have to change schools, lose their friends. The children will adapt. I looked at this scene and felt a strange mixture of pity and relief. I felt sorry for the son who was paying for his wife's mistakes. I felt sorry for the grandchildren who didn't understand why their familiar world was falling apart. But the relief was stronger. Tomorrow, I would be free. In the evening, we began to pack. Deli was bustling about, packing things into boxes and suitcases. The children helped, not really understanding what was going on. Tabitha came up to me several times with questions. Grandma, why are we leaving? Because I need to live separately. And we won't come to see you anymore? You'll come, but you'll live in a different place. But I heard doubt in my granddaughter's voice. She felt that something had broken forever. Aldrich found temporary housing, a small 3-room apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was expensive and cramped, but there was no other choice. I'll rent it for a month, he said. We'll find something better in that time. It took all night to pack everything. It turned out that in 2 years, the family had accumulated a huge amount of junk. Children's toys, clothes, books, dishes, appliances. Everything had to be sorted, packed, and decided what to take and what to leave behind. What should we do with the playground in the garden? Delilah asked. Leave it for the new owners, I replied. They have children too. What about my roses, my favorite roses? I remained silent. What roses? She had dug them up a year ago. By the morning of October 16th, the house was empty. Aldrich hired a truck and moved our things to a rented apartment. Delilah hoped until the last minute that I would change my mind. Bernice, this is your last chance, she said, standing in the hallway with a suitcase in her hands. We can forget everything and start over. No, I replied. We can't. So this is the end? The end. Aldrich hugged me goodbye. Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry we couldn't live together peacefully. Aldrich, it's not your fault. You're a good son. You just got caught up in a difficult situation. Will we see each other again? Of course. You know where to find me. The children said goodbye quietly. Tabitha hugged me and said softly, Grandma, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too, I replied honestly. Wade just waved from the car. He probably didn't fully understand what was happening yet. When the car disappeared around the corner, I was left alone in the empty house. It was a strange feeling, neither relief nor sadness, just emptiness. An hour later, the Baxter couple arrived with a van full of their belongings. A new life at home had begun, and my old life was over. I walked through the empty rooms, remembering different moments. Here was the nursery where the boys had grown up. Here was the kitchen where we had celebrated family celebrations. Here was the living room where I had last quarreled with Delilah. Many memories remained within these walls, but it was time to move on. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I picked up my suitcases and left the house. Forever. On October 18th, the day of the move to my new apartment, I woke up at 6:30 in the morning. Outside the window of my temporary room in a small hotel, a light rain was falling, and the city seemed gray and unwelcoming. But I was in a good mood. Today was the start of my new life. Patricia arrived at 9 in the morning to help with the last documents and hand over the keys to the apartment. The landlady, Mrs. Dagworthy, turned out to be a pleasant woman in her 50s, who was really in a hurry to move to another city to be with her daughter. The apartment is in excellent condition, she said, walking around the rooms one last time. The furniture is almost new and the appliances work. I think you'll like it here. I already liked it. Light walls, large windows, neatly arranged furniture. Everything looked cozy and clean. The living room had a comfortable sofa and a coffee table, perfect for entertaining guests. The kitchen was compact, but had everything I needed. The bedroom overlooked the courtyard with old lime trees, and in the mornings there was no noise from the street. After signing the paperwork, I started unpacking my things. There wasn't much. 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of documents and photographs, and a bag with medicine and cosmetics. Everything I needed to start a new life. First, I arranged the photographs. Several pictures of my husband, photos of my sons as children, a couple of family portraits. Then I put my clothes in the closet and arranged the dishes I had brought with me in the kitchen. By lunchtime, the apartment already looked lived in. At 1 o'clock, Mira called. Bernie, how are you? How's the new apartment? After talking to my friend, I went to explore the neighborhood. There was a small grocery store, a pharmacy, and a hair salon near my house. It was really only a half-hour walk to the center, or 10 minutes by bus. The clinic was 2 blocks away, which was convenient for someone my age. In the evening, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea, I felt a wonderful sense of calm. The house was truly mine. No one could enter without permission. No one dictated the rules. No one considered my desires to be whims. A week passed. I gradually got used to my new rhythm of life. I got up when I wanted, had breakfast at my leisure, read books that I had been putting off for a long time. In the evenings, I watched the programs I liked and listened to classical music at a volume I found comfortable. On Friday, Quentin called. Mom, how are you? How's the new apartment? Fine, son, how are you? What's new? Lots of work, but that's normal. Mom, is it true that you sold the house? So Aldrich had told his brother what had happened. Yes, it's true. And Aldrich and his family moved out? Yes, they're renting an apartment on the outskirts. Quentin was silent for a moment. Mom, what happened? Aldrich didn't explain very well. He just said that you couldn't get along. I told my older son the whole story. How I gradually lost control of my own home. How Delilah turned my life into a nightmare. How it came to an open conflict. Mom, I'm so sorry, Quentin said when I finished. I should have come more often to see what was going on. Son, you have a job, you have your own life. Don't blame yourself. But I'm the eldest son. I should have taken care of the family. You did take care of us. You called, you came to visit, you took an interest in my life. It's just that Delilah was very good at hiding her true colors. And now what? Are you going to live apart? We'll see. Maybe things will work out over time, but I'm not going back to living together. On Saturday, my friends did come over. Mira, Clara, and Mrs. Grimshaw sat in my living room drinking tea and praising my apartment and its furnishings. How cozy it is here, said Clara, and quiet and bright. And most importantly, it's yours, added Mira. No one tells you what to do. Bernice, you did the right thing in taking this step, said Mrs. Grimsby. Not everyone at our age would dare to start life over again. We talked until evening. No one complained about loud voices. No one hinted that it was time to end the gathering. I felt like a proper hostess who could entertain guests whenever and for as long as she wanted. On Sunday evening, Selena Baxter, the new owner of my former home, called unexpectedly. Bernice, I'm sorry to bother you. I have an unusual request. I'm listening. The thing is, my Aunt Esther lives in the neighboring regional center. She recently told me that she has a good friend named Mira, who often mentions a friend named Bernice. Could that be you? I was surprised by the coincidence. It's possible. My friend Mira does sometimes visit relatives in the regional center. Then it all makes sense. Aunt Esther has said many good things about you. She also mentioned that you have a son who works as an engineer in their town. Yes, Quentin. Here's the thing, Selena continued. We have a small extension to our house, a former workshop. We were planning to convert it into a guest room. If your son ever wants to move back to Lissabon, we would be happy to rent him this part of the house. For a nominal fee, of course. It's more important to us to find good, decent people. This was a complete surprise. Quentin had been saying for a long time that he was tired of the big city and would like to return to his hometown. But there were no suitable jobs for him in Lissabon, and housing was expensive. That's a very generous offer, I said. But Quentin has a specific job and there aren't many vacancies like that in Lissabon. Has he considered working remotely? Nowadays, many companies allow their employees to work from home, especially engineers. I promised to pass the offer on to my son and thank them for their consideration. After the conversation, I sat for a long time, thinking about what I had heard. It turned out that my house was going to be in good hands, to people who knew our family through mutual acquaintances and were willing to help. The next day, I called Quentin and told him about the offer. Really? My son asked in surprise. They're willing to rent out part of their house? Yes. Selena said that finding decent tenants is more important to them than making a lot of money. Mom, that's wonderful. I was just thinking about switching to remote work. My boss is fine with it as long as I get results. So, will you think about it? I won't think about it. I'll definitely get in touch with them. I've wanted to come home for a long time. A week later, Quentin arrived in Lissabon, met the Bakers, and looked at the room they were offering. The annex was quite decent. A spacious room with a separate entrance, a small kitchen and a bathroom. It was more than enough for a single man. Mom, they're such nice people, Quentin said after the meeting. Intelligent, well-mannered, and they have wonderful children, a boy and a girl, both very polite. So, are you moving? Next month. I've already arranged remote work with my boss. That evening, Aldrich called me. His voice sounded tired and sad. Mom, how are you? I'm fine, how are you? It's difficult. The apartment is small, expensive, and the neighborhood isn't great. The kids miss their old school and their friends. Delilah? Well, Delilah isn't in the best mood either. Have you been able to find a job? I'm still working at the same car repair shop, but it's a long commute. I spend 2 hours a day just driving to and from work. I felt sorry for my younger son. He was paying for his wife's mistakes, but he didn't want to complain. Aldrich, maybe you should look for a job in another city? Somewhere where housing is cheaper? We're thinking about it. Delilah says we should try the regional center. There are more opportunities there, and it's cheaper to live. The regional center is where Quentin used to work. What an interesting coincidence. Mom, Aldrich continued after a pause, I wanted to apologize for everything that happened, for not being able to prevent the conflict. Aldrich, it's not your fault. It's just the way things turned out. But I knew Delilah sometimes went too far. I should have intervened earlier. Son, you can't come between a husband and wife. You chose your wife, and you did the right thing. But you're my mother, and I'll always be your mother no matter what happens. We just live apart. That doesn't mean I don't love you anymore. Aldrich cheered up a little. Mom, can we come visit you sometimes with the kids? Of course. Our door is always open. But I knew that until Delilah changed her attitude toward me, there would be no real reconciliation. And whether she would change it was a big question. In early November, Quentin moved into an annex of the baker's house. He often came to see me. Luckily, it was only a 15-minute walk. He told me how he was settling in, how he was doing with remote work, and how his relationship with his new neighbors was going. Mom, they're really wonderful people, he said. Robert helped me get the internet connected, and Selena treats me to homemade baked goods. And the kids are so well behaved, not like... He didn't finish, but I knew what he meant. The Baxter children were nothing like the spoiled Tabitha and Wade. In mid-November, something happened that finally showed the difference between my old life and my new one. Mira came down with the flu, and I went to see her every day, helped with shopping, cooked meals, and made sure she took her medicine. Bernie, what would I do without you? My friend said. My relatives are far away. My neighbors are strangers, and you're like a sister to me. I was happy to help her. Finally, I could be useful and feel needed. In the old house, Delilah would have made it clear that a sick friend was my problem and shouldn't interfere with family life. When Mira recovered, she threw a thank you tea party at my apartment. Clara, Mrs. Grimshaw, and a few other mutual acquaintances came. The living room was full of people, conversation, and laughter. It's so nice that you have your own place now, said one of the guests. You can have friends over whenever you want. Yes, I agreed, pouring tea. That's really nice. And I meant it. For the first time in many years, I felt free. Free to choose how to live, who to hang out with, what to do with my time. Delia learned that you shouldn't take other people's kindness for weakness or their hospitality for a right to boss you around. Aldrich realized that you have to protect your loved ones, even if it creates problems in the family. And I got what I had been missing for the last 2 years. Peace and independence. A small apartment where I was the only mistress, and the opportunity to live the way I thought was right. A new life was just beginning.